Boy, it's scary out there.
Ain't much better in here, kid.
Remember back to your first love.
Childhood used to be the best moments of a child's life. You can make risky choices while having fun. If today's parents saw their children do half of what we did back then, they would be in panic mode. So buckle up as we go down memory lane to the times when danger was just another word for fun.
Action.
Riding in the back of a pickup truck. To ride in the back of a pickup truck was a rite of passage from childhood to self-sufficiency. There were no seats or seat belts, and a fast trip to the store or a long haul down the highway, you'd have your feet dangling over the back. Riding with the sun on your face and the wind in your hair was like an outdoor roller coaster, but there was no safety bar to pull down in front of you. It may be crazy to think about it now, but at the time it was normal. You could cram in with all of your friends, and as long as you held on for dear life, it was socially acceptable. Even as recently as today, the very idea of kids in the back of a pickup would result in parents sprinting to their Facebook pages in an attempt to shame the responsible person.
Candy cigarettes. Refreshing and right on the bullseye.
Candy cigarettes. Candy cigarettes were the pinnacle of childhood rebellion. Looking like real cigarettes, these sweet sticks were the favorite of children that wished to imitate their peers. You'd walk around with them between your fingers like a professional smoker, pulling different faces and hand gestures, and children loved to imitate their parents. Today, they're seen as something that belonged to the old world, and due to increasing concerns about the effects of smoking and how it affects children, candy cigarettes are no longer made and are replaced by candy and toys. It seems rather odd kids were encouraged to fake smoke even if they were joking, something that is contrary to the modern approach to changing bad behaviors and embracing a healthy lifestyle.
Is it fun? Is it cool? Are there lots and lots of rules? What's it like to be in school?
Going to school alone. Back when there was no parental escort or GPS tracking, it was just the child, the backpack, and the open road. It didn't matter whether they walked, biked, or even took the bus. There was a higher chance the child got to the destination safely without any issues. Parents didn't have to worry, and the biggest advice that any child had from home was to look carefully before crossing the street. They would often meet up with friends along the way or stop at the corner store for some snacks. And that's a very different thing from what we have now, where parents hold their children's hands to school until they're halfway through the halls. The world is quite different now, and we have everything from tracking apps that give real-time updates to tags. It's a much more dangerous and unpredictable place these days. Playing outside until dark. Back then, we considered playing outside until it was dark the ultimate freedom. We didn't have smartphones or video games and had no reason to stay inside. It was much more fun to gather with friends and create adventures. You'd find children in the evening playing tag and hide and seek, climbing trees and riding bikes for hours. The only thing that ever made us stop was getting tired or the distant call of our parents telling us it was time to come in. It's different today, with parents checking on their children every 5 minutes because they worry about strangers, accidents, and every possible thing that could go wrong. The biggest danger we ever worried about was scraping our knee or a minor argument over who was it.
Daredevils flung themselves headlong into the saddle and dashed off at almost 8 miles an hour.
Riding bikes without a helmet. At that time, we never considered helmets as a necessity. Most of us didn't even own one. We'd usually spend the entire day riding through the neighborhood in and out of traffic and doing whatever we liked. It didn't matter what the path looked like. We considered falling off the bike as part of the experience. Getting bruises was considered a necessary prerequisite to becoming an expert, so we didn't run away from it. Falling off was just part of the game, and if you scraped your knee or elbow, your dad would tell you to rub some dirt on it and get back out there. It's much different today. Helmets are practically non-negotiable. Riding without one is like committing a crime. Parents equip their children with all of the safety necessities and riding gear, and now children are encouraged to ride on designated paths away from the traffic with strict rules. Maybe we should have been a little more careful back then, but somehow we survived. The idea of letting a child go down a busy street without protective gear now is enough to give most parents a heart attack.
Are you going to sip of water? Show me how you're going to sip of water from the hose.
Drinking from the garden hose. On a typical sunny day as a child when you were thirsty after playing in the sun, you didn't head inside for a glass of water, you took a drink from the garden hose. The garden hose allowed a free-flowing amount of water straight into your mouth. There was no bottled water or pitchers. If children today tried to sip from the garden hose, their parents may be horrified. Children are greeted with BPA-free water bottles that are filled from a perfectly filtered source. Sliding down hills. Winter days when the snow was thick and the hills were a playground made by nature. It was different from the experience of playing at a ski resort or a sledding park, but we made the best of it. And back in the day, we used to go down hills on sleds at breakneck speeds without the value of brakes. The greatest adventure was letting a car pull you down the icy road with a rope tied to your waist along with your friends. And the quicker the car, the bigger the thrill. The idea of children attempting anything like this today would have parents shouting, "You could get hurt or slip and fall and crash and lose control," but nobody ever considered it back then. These days it seems wild to look back, but we truly thought it was something normal.
Hello, can I ask you why you're not wearing a seatbelt?
No seat belts. Back in the day, seat belts were purely decorative. Some cars didn't even have them. A ride was synonymous with stretching out and lying down if you were desperate, and some of us were even lucky enough to enjoy sitting in a rear-facing seat in the back of a station wagon. If you were daring enough, you'd stick your head out the window as you went down the highway. Seats and boosters were practically non-existent, and parents today read about that and wouldn't even think of going out of the driveway without buckling up. Today, cars come loaded with airbags, warning lights, child locks, and so much more, all in an effort for safety. Dangerous playground equipment. Playgrounds back then were not safety-oriented designs. It was all metal and heights and pure adrenaline. In the summer, slides were ovens, and they felt like they would burn right through your flesh as you went down them. Jungle gyms were so high that if you fell off, there was no matting below to ease that fall. You'd hit the hard dirt or rocks. And there was the merry-go-round, a sheet of metal that could take off if someone got it spinning fast enough. If someone wasn't holding on to you, you'd be slung into the dirt. These days, playgrounds are essentially high-tech safety zones compared to what we had. Everything you find today is plastic and padded edges. All of it's been designed with safety regulations in mind, but the danger back then was just part of the fun. You would always expect to get a few bumps and bruises because it would toughen you up, but today, parents would lose their minds at the thought of those old metal death traps.
How many cigarettes do you smoke a day? Oh, roughly 20 a day.
Smoking everywhere. It's amazing how common smoking was back then. It was everywhere. You couldn't escape it if you wanted to. You inhale the cigarettes secondhand in restaurants, at the mall, on the airplane, and even with a family in the car and the windows rolled up. If you were going to the grocery store or the doctor's, you would find a layer of smoke just hanging there. And it wasn't only adults. Children were born and raised in the smoke of their parents. Today it would be unthinkable because it's so unpopular that it's been banned in public, and the idea of puffing away next to children is unheard of. And these days, everybody knows the health risks involved. BB gun fights. Back then, every child participated in at least one BB gun fight in their life. You'd gather in your backyard, the surrounding fields, or wooded areas with BB guns fully engaged in a real game of pretend war. We didn't have any safety gear or even see a need for it. and nobody had more protection than a pair of sunglasses or maybe a winter jacket if you were lucky. We'd shoot each other in the legs and arms and the occasional headshot, and looking back, it seems incredible that any of us lived. These days, BB guns have an extensive range of safety directions, and it's safe to say that most parents would never dream of allowing their children to utilize one without holding on.
Never be tempted to return to examine a dud. It might not be.
Fireworks. Back then, fireworks were not limited to the 4th of July. They were used as a form of entertainment. It was expected of children to light up fireworks on their own. We were provided the matches and the fireworks, whether it was sparklers, bottle rockets, or more. We had a lot of fun lighting the fuse and running away before it went off, and sometimes parents were home, but often they would leave and give the children a few dollars to fend for themselves. With that, we'd buy firecrackers and watch as they went off in every which way. Roman candles and even cherry bombs were all fair game. And in the present day, children using fireworks without supervision is unheard of.
I took a shower washing every body part with actual soap, including all my major... I can't seem to find my toothbrush, so I'll pick one up when I go out today.
Home alone at age 8. Parents used to go out for shopping, to the office, or even other functions and left us all home alone for hours. The rules were simple: don't open the door, don't use the stove, and call us if necessary. Back then, it wasn't a big deal to leave a child alone for the whole afternoon or the evening, and today most parents would shudder at that thought. Replacing the feeling of early freedom, babysitters, after-school programs, and strict age restrictions have been put into place. These days, parents are concerned with home invasions to accidents, with safety being the #1 concern. But back then, it was something big to be trusted to stay home alone, and we were like little grown-ups that ruled our own small kingdom. A sugar-laden diet. Back in the day, sugar was not what people thought as an instant threat to your diet. It was present in almost everything. Breakfast would consist of a large serving of marshmallows and sugary cereal, and no one was bothered about nutritional value. Lunch would be accompanied by a neon-colored juice box, a sugary snack, or maybe a soda if you were lucky. All that was needed was a candy bar, a fruit roll-up, or anything that could be dipped in sugar. There were no such things like counting grams of sugar or people looking to see if their food was high in fructose corn syrup. We just ate what tasted good. These days, parents monitor sugar, and everyone's focused on avoiding processed sugar and limiting sweets. Children have lower sugar intake, and instead of sugary cereals, burgers, and sandwiches, children eat organic products, fruits, and vegetables, and they take them to school. Processed foods were a normal part of our daily life back then, but these days it's all about what's real. No bike lights or reflectors. Back in the day, riding your bike at night was as normal as it could be. People weren't worried about getting trapped on the road in the evening with no lights and reflectors. You'd be out all evening driving around with almost no light. The only real source was from a passing car you'd hope to see, since there were no sidewalk lights, no helmets, no equipment, and only the darkness of night with the wind rushing across the car, and it was all normal. You have to wonder why we didn't have more accidents out on the road. The concept of cycling at night with no lights or reflectors is unimaginable these days. We have everything from headlamps to strips and high-quality LEDs as a rule. DIY fireworks shows. Another aspect of the 4th of July that many people loved but are now rare to see was improvised displays of fireworks. Parents would allow their children to use fireworks, from a simple sparkler to a homemade device, and there was never a dull moment. You huddled up to light the fuse, shoot off a bottle rocket, and make your backyard spectacular. This often led to burns and singed eyebrows and the occasional minor explosion, but that was just part of the fun and thrill of celebrating Independence Day. Today, it's considered reckless to allow a child to take charge of fireworks, even when under supervision. They're now managed by professionals during events, celebrations, and festivals, and there are laws to follow when handling them. Parents make sure the only thing that can burn is the barbecue and not the child's eyebrows. Barefoot everywhere. Whether you were going for a walk in the park or a jog around the neighborhood, or even going to the shop, you'd wander around barefoot wherever you went. We didn't pay attention to grass or gravel or hot pavement, or even a piece of sharp broken glass. It was liberating to get the feeling of the ground on the soles of your feet, but it was also painful to stub your toe or get a cut. In today's generation, children running around with no shoes seems to be strange. Given the heightened sensibility around hygiene and protection, most parents wouldn't even consider allowing their children to do it. Riding alone on public transport. Back then, riding public transport alone as a child was a common practice amongst children. Children between the ages of 10 were independently leaving homes and boarding buses or subways for school, or even a friend's house. No one would bat an eye at a young child juggling the nuances of a bus route or a subway timetable, but in the world today it seems impossible to have a child be allowed to travel this way. For this reason, parents are now more cautious, and safety is a consideration. From strangers and risks that are found in urban areas, there has to be supervision. No sunscreen. In the old days, sunscreen wasn't as popular as it is today. It was something you would use if you had the chance to go to the beach in the summer. Children were out there in the sun for hours, playing outdoors at the playground and the beach with no sunscreen at all. If you suffered from a sunburn, you had to put on some aloe, and you'd feel uncomfortable for a few days before getting back on track. People saw it as nothing unusual, and getting a sunburn was considered the norm during the summer. And today, using sunscreen is something that everybody talks about. Children use it at the beach and in their day-to-day activities. Roller skating without pads or helmets. Roller skating was a sport which was a favorite pastime activity, and nobody considered it necessary that they would wear protective gear like pads and helmets. Children could free ride through the neighborhood and skate parks, or even at the skating rink, and would run into each other and fall down wearing only knee protectors. You'd get bruises and scrapes everywhere, but all that protective gear was an afterthought. In the present day, if a child goes out without the gear, it would attract a lot of attention. Which of these things from our old lifestyle do you miss the most? Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you never miss another great memory in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.